There we go.
Hi.
Hey, look at this. Good job, Mighty
Yeah.
Networks. They made this just like Instagram Live.
That's right.
Yeah, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Yeah, so Barb is, for those of you who don't know, Barb Burwell is one of our members in the My Sober Girlfriends community. She's also a friend of mine. She and I were in a book club for maybe 2.5 years or so, where we were reading a book by a Black author in all kinds of different genres, reading a book every 6 weeks. And we did that for about 2.5 years. That was a really great learning experience for me, and I got to know Barb really well. And she is a former art educator and a professional a professional artist who led a workshop for us last year that was really popular. I got to participate in it as well, so I loved it. It was about the freedom of creativity. And so we're doing another one this year. I'm very excited. And so she's here to talk about creativity and sobriety and some more about her workshop, what she has in store for us. And it's good to see you, Barb.
Good to see you.
So yeah, I was wondering if you minded starting out by just telling us just a little bit about your own sobriety story.
Sure. Well, it was one of those things where I was using alcohol to cope with grief and cope with anxiety. But strangely enough, it didn't help either one of those things. Go figure that. And I decided on a big birthday that I was going to quit for 1 year, even though deep down inside I knew that it was going to be forever. And it was the best birthday gift I could have ever given myself. And it just made my life so much richer and calmer and easier overall. So,
Yeah. You know that it's funny, Barb, because when I was interviewed on this podcast called Nature Untold, the person who was interviewing me, he had said that was one of the most common ways that he had heard people entering into sobriety was with this commitment of 1 year and telling themselves it's just an experiment. I'm just experimenting for 1 year. And he said the people that he has interviewed that have then, been successful in continuing on into long-term sobriety, it was that 1 year commitment. And that's what I did too. So that's really interesting.
Well, I think it's an easy way to announce it to the people in your life too, because 1 year is sort of an easy to digest concept for everybody, because I think some people in your life, it kind of scares them a little bit when they hear that you're quitting drinking, because then that sort of reflects to them and their relationship with alcohol or whatever it is that they are, using to sort of tamp themselves down. That's my opinion. That's what I was using it for. So, but I'm in my 5th year and it's very exciting. So
yeah, it is. I love sobriety. And yeah, I think that's a good point, because otherwise a lot of times what happens if people say, oh, I'm just doing it for this amount of time or this amount of time, then people will start asking you, like, oh, are you drinking again? But if you say a whole year, then now they're like, oh, okay, it's a whole year. Like I'm just,
right.
So it's going to be all the holidays, all the, whatever. Although they may still ask sometimes, like, what, really? Like, even though your brother's wedding is coming up or whatever. And it's like, yep, just doing the whole year. Just going for it.
Yeah.
So Barb, how do you feel, what are some ways that you feel that your creativity and your personal art practice shifted once you removed alcohol from your life?
Well, practically speaking, just not feeling exhausted, having the energy for it was helpful. Um, I'm laughing just because there are a couple times where I do just be like, ugh, just feeling so icky. But just like, okay, I've got to push through and do what I need to do. But something that I found really interesting was, because art was my thing. I had to do it. I got paid to do it. I taught it in public high school, all that stuff. But so it was a regular practice, but lifting myself out of using alcohol allowed my relationship with my creative practice to deepen. There's something about like lifting that fog, like I had more physical energy, I had more mental energy, and it just almost like the colors were brighter, and things were easy. Making art can be challenging, but it just like the questions that I was asking myself were different. My experience working with the art was more joyful and just easy, and I don't know, just really enriched my practice. So, and it also just allowed me to see things a lot differently. Like I got out of a rut. So, and my work has definitely grown tremendously since it. So.
Yeah, that makes so much sense when you're talking about just the energy, like your energy level, and about how much. So you're saying like even just on this practical level, like this physical level of having the physical energy that's available for art instead of just recovering from the poison that you've been ingesting the night before, or even 2 days before, whatever. But it sounds like, even just the emotional energy and the mental energy that goes to even managing, trying to keep ourselves on some kind of enough of an even keel with the drinking to like keep ourselves going. There's just so much energy gets poured into alcohol, and it's like, for the sake of what? Like, what are we doing this for?
Right.
Yeah. And to be able to have all of that available for your creative practice.
Even keel, that is a really great way to describe it. It's just like having the space, because it's there, you kind of know what to expect, and it's just like you can just do it. So
Yeah. Well, and then those of us that enjoy your art, like, we get to benefit from your sobriety as well. I've got one of your pieces, here on my wall, which is so Barb does multimedia work, and this is one of her quilts that she's put together. I don't know if there's anything you want to say about this.
Oh, the piece?
Yeah.
It was an assignment from a workshop that I took, and my teacher, he gave us each an artist to look at. No, I'm sorry. We were all looking at the artist, Paul Klee, Klee. And the image that I got was fascinating. We had to do our interpretation of what we were getting from the particular image. And there's a little artist statement from each that was included with each of the images. So that was sort of what we just riffed on. And his motto is just cut, sew, repeat. And just, he kind of believes, like, his philosophy, and I can believe it, I agree with it rather, is that the art is already made. It's like there's this pre-conscious thing. And so it's just a matter of bringing it into the world. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful. Well, yeah, I love it. I love the colors. I love just the movement of it. Yeah, I love this piece. And then I actually have two of Barb's pieces on my wall, because I have another one here that she's done with paint. So let's see, a couple other questions. Actually, do you want to just go into talking some about the workshop and kind of what inspired it? And what people can expect in the workshop?
Well, it's creative freedom. And I wanted to put together something, because I do a lot of sketchbook work, and a lot of that informs my other work, and people had made comments about it, were asking questions about it. So I decided to kind of take some of my techniques that I use in just the process of art making, not necessarily making work that I would sell, but the work that feeds my creativity. And so with this, I thought it would be interesting to put together something that really is for anybody and wherever they're at in their own personal creative journey, which it is a journey. It's hopefully a lifetime journey. So anyone that's returning to creative practice, or maybe wanting to start something, or even people that have kind of a robust practice already, but just sort of getting a different perspective and doing some new things. And one of my big philosophies with nurturing creativity is that, the act of being creative brings you the energy that, for me personally, like fills me up and makes me feel alive. And with that, it brings me the energy to make more. It's sort of that reciprocal relationship. So I wanted to create some small methods where people could just make quick, easy pieces that are about the process and not about the outcome, which I think will eventually inform. It's sort of like journaling, or any, like a running practice. Like the more you do it, the more you can get information from it. And just the idea of, bringing that consistency to a practice. I call it daily-ish because I think putting those constraints on having to do something every day puts a little bit of pressure on it. But if you have something that you can go to that's just ready to roll, then you can incorporate it into your life. So, yeah. And the class, we're kind of going to start off doing getting your body and out of your mind warm up, which I think is really fun because I made some prompt cards and I'll just pull them randomly and we'll just sort of respond to whatever the card says. And then I have 2 fun collage exercises that build on one another. And the final one, I hope, the abstract collage lesson is something that can be incorporated into whatever practice, however you want to take the practice with you.
Yeah, there's a couple things that are standing out to me, Barb, about what you're sharing about creativity and what you're going to be emphasizing in this workshop. I was just thinking about the difference between what you're talking about when you're talking about the actual practice of creating and the act of creating, and about how, like that, what you just said about how the more that we do it, the more that we can actually get information from the practice itself. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that in contrast with something else, which is also a fun activity that people enjoy, which is totally different, which are these like sip and paint kind of things. Mm-hmm. When it's just like, here's the picture. I want you to just copy this picture, and like, I'll show you how to do it. Just copy it. And I've only done one of those classes one time, but I was just so focused on, I'm just trying to recreate their exact thing. It was the product was the only thing I cared about. And of course I was going to fail at it because I'm not going to be able to make something that looks just like their hummingbird, And it just like, it was not a very, like, for me, the experience didn't bring life into my body, I mean, I think sometimes when people are like, that was great. Well, they were also drinking. And so, maybe that was part of it. But you're talking about like true life and true, and there's that idea of that we can have a process that is like bringing something to us. Mm-hmm. Like, that's really exciting to me.
Well, just like it's the cultivation of that internal landscape. and I did one of those sip and paint classes too. And being the artiste, there was so much pressure put on me. And I was just like, I couldn't do it because it was just like overwhelming. So I think that's kind of like I was doing a bunch of air painting where I'm just like holding the brush up, it's like, I don't want to do this. It's too much. So, but I think because I really do practice this, like, I'm trying to think of how to explain it, like of it being part of the daily life, because every day is different, right? And every time you go to, like, I do collage, I go to my stash, and I find colors or textures or patterns that are interesting to me that day. And then maybe it's something different the next day. And then maybe, a week or so, you can kind of see a pattern form. And you can sort of follow that lead. And then what that does is creates a language for yourself. So then you kind of have an idea of what you want to work from. So then that's answering a whole, artistic problem, or like whatever you want to call it. So you have this there, so then you can go to the next level because you've already laid down this foundation. And that's sort of how I see it. Plus, it's just really fun to go and look back and maybe do sketches from what you've made, and then maybe do a different piece from that. And then, I don't know, it's all sort of this reciprocal technique that I like to use. It gets a little meta, like, the painting of the drawing, and then doing a drawing from a painting, and then doing that drawing. So,
yeah. So, and then of course in the workshop, I mean, because you're talking about some very, well, actually, I mean, what you're talking about could be applied to a lot of different areas in life. But I know, I just want to say for anybody who's watching this and listening to this, the recording also, is that it's not like, this workshop is not intimidating at all. Like there is no way to do this wrong. That was what people were saying last year, was they just felt like they truly felt a lot of freedom. I mean, the word freedom is in the title, but it's like, it is very freeing. People felt very playful, very like open and connected to themselves, connected to other people, giggling, like they mentioned giggling. So yeah. And like you said, getting out of your head, which there's so many of us that need a lot of help with that.
Yeah. And I think I also need to practice that, so this is like stuff that I really do for myself, and it's just sort of like that observe and make, observe, make, reflect. That's sort of how it is. And I don't know if it needs to be fun, or what's the point, honestly? Like, why? Like, I don't know. I feel really lucky that I get to do stuff that's fun. Really lucky. Really lucky. So.
I love those. I love those pieces that are behind you too. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
You can get the camera. So that's sort of a little bit of the meta going on there. So like the two little paper, it's on paper, it's mixed media on paper. Those were drawn from another drawing I did. And then the canvas right here is in response to those two. And there's one like right above my head. I was reading Jerry Saltz's book. He's an art critic and hilarious, and just a real champion of art and artists. And he would talk about different art philosophy and how to be an artist. And one of the things that he said is to make a piece in one sitting, and it should be a minimum of 20 minutes and a maximum of 3 hours. And you just like go to town. So I'm like, I'm going to do that. That'll be cool. But I had so much fun, and I tried to do it faster rather than slower. So the paint was wet and it's kind of messy, and it just was so much fun. And I really enjoyed doing that a lot. So I want to kind of bring some of that attitude into the workshop too. Like, don't overthink it, just do it.
Yes. Yes, none of that air painting, like, oh, I've got to make sure I make this thing just right before I put my brush on the
Yeah.
canvas.
I do spend quite a bit of time air painting and air drawing, just because I think it, because you are like worried about it, but it's also like for me, and also a mechanism to kind of reflect on what I'm doing. Because I think I did an Instagram post the other day about a lot of what I do is sitting and looking at stuff, which is, a big part of the art process. So cultivating that internal landscape.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, cool. Which of course, when we're drinking or, for me, I always mention about smoking a lot of pot, that internal landscape is something that we tend to ignore.
Yeah. Well, I think it just kind of a layer sort of placed between you and it. I think some people mention like a veil being lifted when they find sobriety. And I think that that's the same thing, kind of tamps it down. Also, maybe it's just a mechanism to, I don't know, self-sabotage too. Like if you indulge in things that keep you from being able to express it, then, maybe that needs to be looked at too. So,
right. Yeah. It's like, I don't have to risk disappointing myself or feeling like a failure if I just never try.
right.
And if I'm just like, oh, well, I'm just, it was wine o'clock again. And so of course I didn't do that thing.
Right. Well, and I think too, like with this in the class, like there's nothing, I think you mentioned this before, there is no wrong, because whatever is made because it's supposed to be made. And the sole purpose is that it is what it is.
Yeah.
And maybe that, like I said before, will inform something different. And that's the formula, the beauty of it.
Yeah. And like you said, it's about the process too, like what you're teaching. We're not going to, some people might make something that like, yeah, I want to display this, but it's all about the process and just noticing what we're noticing as we're actually creating.
Right.
So
I think that's the fun of it too. Like even when I prepare for the classes, like I'm going through magazines and stuff, and I'm like, ooh, I like this, and I set it aside because it's ringing my bell, and I'll keep those around and kind of look at them like, well, what is this that's so interesting? Like, what is the shape? Like, I think with the last class, I kept seeing grids everywhere. One of it was even like a cooling rack with cookies on it, but the grid was so interesting to me. And now that is leading to a fiber art project for a land art project that I'm going to be doing in August, like using that grid shape. So you just never know, Better Homes and Garden cookie sheet or cookies on a drying, or not a drying, but a cooling rack could lead to all kinds of things. So.
Yeah, that's so cool to think about, because that's really how life works, I think. Well, Barb, what I love about you doing this workshop is that not only do you obviously, like, you live, this is your life, like you live it. Everything you're going to be talking about in this workshop, this is a lived experience for you.
Yeah.
But also, unlike a lot of other artists, you have also been trained as an educator, and so like, some artists, when they try to teach, like they don't have the teaching background, but you also have a teaching background, which is awesome. And then of course you've also got your beautiful, warm personality. And so it's kind of like all of those things, put together and you're sober. So and you're here in Portland. So it's like, so many things coming together to just make this the perfect workshops for anyone who is just interested in having this experience of exploring their own creativity in a different way, and thinking about themselves and like, how is my tapping into my own creativity helping to support my sobriety, or just like makes my sobriety make so much more sense. It's like, can you even imagine going back to drinking now? Like what it would do to your creative practice?
Just are referring to the sip and draw thing, like made my stomach kind of roll a little bit like, oh, so, but no, it would just be no bueno. So
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense.
yeah. That doesn't make
So let's
sense.
see. So the details, so it's on April, not August, April 8th. It's from 2 to 5 p.m., but people can arrive anytime between 1:30 and 2 if they want to have some tea and just chat with people, get kind of settled in, have some time to get settled in. We've got an event space that's off of Alberta that we'll be in, and they don't need to bring anything except their own snacks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Do they need to worry anything about their clothing or?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't maybe wear something that is washable. There's not going to be any paint or anything that's going to stain inks or anything like that. But, you know, it better be safe than sorry. So you never know.
Don't wear your dry clean only winter whites.
Yeah, your cashmere, maybe not bring that. But yeah, you don't need to bring an apron or a smock or anything like that. It's not going to be too messy. But bring an open mind and your curiosity. That's very important to bring. So
yes.
Yeah, and I'm just any excuse to talk about creativity, I'm there. So I'm really looking forward to that. So
yeah, me too. All right. Well, thank you, Barb.
yeah,
Everybody have a good week. Yeah, I'll be posting this in a couple of different places for people to get some more information about it and just kind of get that little extra boost. Sometimes people get nervous when they start thinking like, oh, I don't know, like what if am I going to feel like what I make isn't very good, or am I going to
piles of stuff that I deem no good. And that's the beauty of it, because then occasionally this jewel sort of floats to the surface, and anything that gets done is going to make the real art better. So, but even if you're not like an artist, just doing something with purpose like this will allow that space to open up, where I don't know, anything like when you move through life with purpose, it just opens up to answers that you may need to have, or I don't know. So I think it's important just to create that space. So
that's beautiful, Barb. Moving through life with purpose. Yeah.
Yes.
See what it opens up. All right. Well, thank you so much. Say goodbye to everyone. Have a wonderful week. Hope to see you soon.
Yes.
And if you're available, sign up on the Eventbrite link. We'd love to see you there.
Bye.